Mother Earth. My father was a strict man. As a boy, I had to walk very softly in our home whenever he was around. I was trained to speak quietly and quell any desire to sing or whistle. I found it strange that here in America even the tea kettle whistled to call me. Since landing here, I had progressed quickly in the art of making tea. Here I was, early in the morning, making tea for my daughter. I had had a little tiff with her the previous day, and I wanted to make it up to her. She came out of the bathroom, and I looked the other way, sulking. She gave me a noisy, friendly punch on my back. It meant the war between us was over, and when I turned to look at her, she had run away, leaving a trail of giggles. The row was not about anything particularly important. Apparently, I had forgotten her boyfriend's birthday. Was memorizing the birthday of his daughter's boyfriend the foremost duty of a father? My daughter lived in New Jersey. I had traveled 500 miles the previous day to be with her, and there she was, planning to visit her boyfriend in another part of the country that very day. In addition, she blamed me for not remembering her boyfriend's birthday. In a manner that was both pleading and indignant, she had rolled her eyes, opened them wide, and asked me to escort her on her wild expedition. She had said that she had given her word to be with him on his birthday, and hadn't I taught her to honor promises made? She has a charming way of driving. There are no ornaments on her person except the odd curls of hair that fall on her forehead. She was so young, but already held a senior position in a private firm. She calls all her colleagues by their first names. She has hundreds of telephone numbers registered in her memory and talks non-stop on her cell phone, even when she's driving fast. She touches the numbers lightly, with the fingers of one hand, the way she might put a ready-made potou on her forehead, while listening to the soft music emanating from all four corners of her car. At my first job, my place was between the photocopier and the coffee machine, in the basement. The reception and office rooms were above me. All the accounting and export-related work was relegated to the basement. The room buzzed with the noises made by the crowd that swarmed around the coffee machine, the sounds that the copying machine produced from time to time, and the frequent beeps the computers made. A strange odor would breeze toward me from the copier at regular intervals. The girl operating the computer next to me was a high school dropout, endowed with a snake-like body and eyes like Californian grapes. She either came in dancing or slouched in with a sulk on her face. Her moods kept swinging from one extreme to another like a pendulum. The two sole aspects of her life were love and the pangs of separation. At one time, she had 4 lovers, one for each day. On those rare occasions when she was completely without a date, she would implode into a poem of misery. At other times, she floated around, dispensing coffee for all of us. Our boss had an extraordinary liking for that coffee, and would trundle down 100 times a day to have a drink. There were 3 words that consumed his vocabulary, all of which concerned the human body below the waist. If he were ever asked to speak without those 3 words, the poor man would be completely lost. When he asked for a cup of coffee, he used those words. When he lost a file, he used the same words. I wondered how he communicated with his family. There are 2 kinds of fools, the average kind and the master kind. My boss belonged to the second category. Whenever he had something to say, he spoke at length and in circles. At the end of his speech, you would find the subject about as clear as the water in a pond muddied by a buffalo. You might have seen files marked urgent, ordinary, and rush in other offices, but he was the first person to introduce 2 kinds of trash bins, One was marked urgent and the other ordinary. What kind of a man labels trash as urgent? Not a day passed without my ruining the day I had become his employee. On the weekend, all the sorrows and indignities of the office disappeared as if by magic. Every Saturday, at 10 in the morning, my daughter and I went to the laundry, carrying bags of soiled clothes, holding hands and chatting happily. I looked forward to those Saturday mornings, and so did my daughter. During that 10-minute walk, she asked me 1,000 questions. Whether she understood me or not, I always tried to answer her as best I could. There were about 30 machines in that laundry. We washed our clothes in Maytag 22, a machine that was almost our personal deity. You dropped 4 cash tokens in the slot and watched in wonder as the giant machine, hissing slowly at first, would spin our clothes at unbelievable speeds. The machine rested after 40 minutes. We would remove the wet clothes, load the dryers, and let them run for 20 minutes. When we took our clothes out, they would be soft and warm, with a sweet scent that filled the room. My daughter learnt to drop coins in the automatic vending machines and pick up a variety of sweets. Every time a candy dropped from the machine, she would stand on her tiptoes to reach it, clapping with excitement each time. She never grew tired of our Saturday routine. It became our weekly ritual. My daughter has this tendency to let tears fill her eyes and flow over the slightest provocation. No matter how inconsequential the problem, her compulsive tears would burst the dam, even before she spoke. On one of our visits to the laundry, we found an old woman who had loaded our Maytag 22 with her clothes. She stopped her knitting every now and then to take a look at the machine while it devoutly continued its work. My daughter could not accept this intrusion. Appa, she took our machine!" she bawled as she shot the old lady a series of angry stares. Until that day, she had believed that Maytag 22 somehow belonged to us. She accepted the situation after I explained it to her, but could not bring herself to forgive the old lady. Then there was the time we lost her sock. We had just finished doing the laundry and were at home watching my wife count out all the clothes. My wife had perfect 20/20 vision. "Now, why is one sock of this pair missing?" she asked. That did it. My daughter's eyes began to shed copious quantities of tears, as if a switch had been turned on. Her tears were unstoppable. It was a worthless issue, yet my little girl was sobbing as if her life depended on it. The following Saturday, a surprise was awaiting us in the laundry. My daughter's single sock hung proudly from the notice board. Below it someone had written, "Did anyone see my other half?" My daughter was happier than I had ever seen her before. During one of our routine Saturday expeditions to Maytag 22, we christened the machine Bhuma Devi, Mother Earth. That week we had more washing than usual. After the machine had been loaded, we still had some clothes left over. I decided to take the leftovers home and bring them back the week after, but my daughter insisted that we do a second load. We had a very big argument that day. I explained that the wastewater from the washing goes down somewhere into the earth. The environment gets polluted by this water. While we have a somewhat valid reason when we have a full load, we must avoid polluting the surroundings by using the machine with half loads. "Bhuma Devi is a benevolent person," I said. "She forgets all the harm done to her and gives generously of her bounty. This forgetfulness is her most notable quality. She does only good, caring for us like a mother. Shouldn't we be good to such a kind mother?" Whether she understood me or not, my daughter nodded her head vigorously in agreement. Another day, I had to lecture my 4-year-old daughter about how important it was to honor our commitments. It happened during our 40-minute wait for the wash to be done. My little daughter was quite tense that day and had managed to elongate her face to a sullen look. That looked beautiful, too. It was the birthday of the girl downstairs, and my daughter had promised to attend the party. However, an unexpected thing happened, and she wanted to do something else instead. A friend had promised to give us a pup that afternoon, and my daughter didn't want to miss playing with the pup. There, amid the sounds of the washing machines and dryers, I told her the story of Washerman. A long time ago, there was a washerman called Nayanar, who made it his duty to wash the clothes of devotees coming to the temple free of charge. He agreed to wash the single cloth of an old devotee who told him, "I have only this rag. You have to wash and dry it before the day ends." Nayanar agreed to the request, washed the rag, and set it out to dry. Just then, the sky darkened, and it began to rain. It was almost evening, and the old devotee stood shivering in the cold, asking for his piece of cloth. The contract was that the cloth would be washed and dried. It was his job to wash, but was it not the sun's work to dry it? But he had given his word. In the end, there was a miracle, and God himself appeared to dry the lone rag. For a reason known only to her, my daughter loved that story. She nodded solemnly, and when we got home she attended the birthday party because promises must be kept. There was inadequate heating in the building where I worked. To make things worse, my office was in the basement, and the cold was unbearable. Work that had to be finished before a deadline kept piling up in front of me. I came from a lineage of people who never complained. The bits of work that others did not complete also came to me. By the time I got done with all that work, it was late at night. In those early days, when we were in the country as refugees, we did not have the money to buy the right type of winter clothing, nor did we know how to protect ourselves against the cold. I spent my days shivering in the basement, gritting my teeth, trying to get through the day, careful to avoid the secretarial goddess at the height of her love-sickness. We suffered in silence back then. I thought of my wife, who waited up for me at home. On all those occasions when I felt miserable thinking about the trials and humiliations we had to face to make a living in this country, my thoughts would drift to my daughter. Quite unexpectedly, I got a job that actually matched my qualifications. I switched jobs and houses, and our lives finally started heading in the right direction. The greatest tragedy of these fortuitous events was that the new house had a washing machine and dryer. Our Saturdays with Maytag 22 disappeared. Those moments when I could have private conversations with my daughter became fewer and fewer. She grew up, moved out, and started living in her own world. Those first 9 months of my immigrant life became the most precious and unforgettable experience to me. I chanted Exit 241 over and over, aloud and in my head. If we took that exit, we would find excellent coffee and donuts. Our car was speeding away like Nalan's chariot. Even before I could shout, Exit 241, the car had sped past. I was disappointed. I had looked forward to those donuts and coffee for a long time. Turning back to weave our way to the last exit would be as difficult as having to find the beginning of a string hopper thread. My daughter turned toward me and said, "Sorry, Appa," and remembered to take the next exit. She ordered coffee and nudged me lovingly and smiled. Our poets often spoke of the different ages of a child, when the child delighted in different ways of playing. The times when a child passed through the clapping games, the looking at the moon games, playing with little stones called ammonais, and so on. Even in America, children pass through seasons of life. My daughter's first craze was Barbie dolls, and at one time She had 3 of them. That innocent age was a very happy time, a world in itself. She played for hours on end with those dolls. She must have been about 11 when she went camping overnight for the first time. She had not been separated from us for even a day before that. When the day finally arrived, she hesitated. We had to console her and make her go. When she came back the following day, she hugged us as never before. She spent the next 2 days recounting her experiences of that one day. The pain of separation, the excitement of her being independent, and the joy of reunion was unlike anything we as a family had experienced before. Then came the music madness, and the era of long conversations on the phone with her friends. She was a teenager. Bob Marley was famous then. She collected his records. The house resounded with his high-pitched singing. Large-size photographs of him with his long hair and bare torso decorated her room on all sides. I had dozed off. The car was at a gas station. It was a self-service pump, and she paid for the gas with her credit card. The unknown young attendant said something to her, and she laughed heartily until there were tears in her eyes. He returned the card, saying, "Have a nice day." She said, "You too," and took her card back. At that moment, I felt she had completely changed into an American girl. Once, after she had grown up a little and some American culture had already seeped into her, I told her the story of Lord Krishna. I had slight difficulty in describing to her the birth of Balarama. The problem came when I told her that Balarama was conceived by Vasuki and was magically transferred into Rohini's womb. She thought for a while and said, "Oh, a surrogate mother." She was slowly slipping out of my orb. She had reached the stage when our mythology could only be conveyed to her in an American way. Now my daughter was traveling 500 miles to keep a commitment, and the car was nearing the city of Boston, where I had spent the first 9 months of my immigrant life. It was there, shivering in the cold, that I had learnt the basics of working in America. It was there that my unforgettable, happy Saturday mornings had happened, when, holding the tender finger of my daughter, I had gone on pilgrimages to the laundry. There I told her stories of Mother Earth, Nayanar, and the heritage of our dear Yazpanam, from where we fled. Suddenly, there it was, the laundromat. With the enthusiasm of a young boy, I shouted, "Look there! Bhuma Devi!" She didn't even turn her head to take a look. She asked, "What is it, Appa?" "Bhuma Devi? What do you mean?" I saw it fleetingly. It looked much as it had done before. The name board looked a little duller. 30 washing machines and 30 dryers would still be at work, diligently contributing to the demise of Mother Earth, so that man could have an easier life. My daughter said, "Appa, suddenly you're quiet." I was deep in thought, and she asked a second time, "What is it, Appa?" And I said, "Nothing." The car was speeding along the lane allocated for cars with more than one passenger. Like Nalan's chariot, it was faster than the wind, breaking all the prescribed speed limits, flying past the buildings, and leaving behind everything.